Have you ever looked at the world today and wondered, why do the ignorant, less analytical, but confident speakers get heard more than the careful, wise, and humble ones? We are living in a strange era, where ignorance is not only forgiven but celebrated. Sounds extreme, but think again. The loudest speaker often gets the most attention. Those who speak with certainty are seen as leaders. Simple, sensational, anti-intellectual content becomes trendy. Meanwhile, complexity, nuance, and deep understanding are dismissed as troublesome or hard to digest. The question is, why is this happening? What is turning ignorance into a social advantage, instead of something shameful? Could it be that modern society, with all its technology, media, education, and civilization, is unintentionally or deliberately rewarding shallowness, ease, and anti-thinking? In this video, we will dissect one of the gravest diseases of contemporary society, the reversal of values, where ignorance is cherished and knowledge is neglected. We will go through many layers, from mass media to social media, from the education system to the political, cultural, and economic environment. Each puzzle piece will appear, and the horrifying picture behind it will gradually be revealed. If you feel like the world is becoming systematically stupid, if you've ever been looked down upon just because you know more than the majority, if you've ever asked, why do people believe such absurd things? Then this video is for you. We are living in a surface-level society, a world where value no longer lies in depth, but in speed, visual appeal, and the ability to grab attention within the first 3 seconds. You don't have to be right. You just need to be noticed. Look at how media platforms operate. The more sensational the headline, the more it gets shared. The more simplified the content, the more easily it spreads. Analytical social videos over 1 minute long. Almost no chance of survival. We are being taught to scroll, not to think. From YouTube, TikTok to Instagram, every platform rewards simplicity. The easier a message is to understand, the more black and white it is, the more it cuts away complexity, the wider it spreads. And that is how shallowness becomes a social standard. Those who speak in complex ways, provide arguments, evidence, and multidimensional analysis are often seen as complicated, all theory, or worse, intellectual snobs. Meanwhile, those who speak simply, bluntly, shockingly, even illogically are seen as realistic, bold, and honest. This is no longer an exception. This is the mechanism. We have shifted from a society seeking truth to a society seeking engagement. Truth requires time, analysis, and listening. Engagement only needs shock, emotional stimulation, and repetition of the simple. Ignorance, in the true sense of lacking depth and critical thinking, fits perfectly with this logic. When platforms reward those who create faster, simpler, more addictive content, then content creators themselves must adapt. Not because they are ignorant, but because the system is forcing them to create ignorant content. The more someone simplifies everything, the more the system rewards them. From there, we begin to create a dangerous loop. The ignorant become the prominent. The prominent are seen as trustworthy. The trustworthy begin to shape the crowd's beliefs. And the crowd, instead of doubting, applauds. Gradually, an entire society operates by the rule of simplification, not by truth. Knowledge becomes scary, not because it's wrong, but because it makes people feel less smart. Ignorance feels comfortable, because it makes us feel agreed with. We no longer ask, is this true? We only ask, do I feel comfortable hearing it? And so, in a world overwhelmed with information, the winner is not the one who is right, but the one who is the simplest, the most confident, and repeats the most. Ignorance is not just the result of a shallow society. In the modern world, it is also a tool, exploited, replicated, and commercialized. Whoever controls this tool controls the minds of the masses. Do you think an unknown individual with limited knowledge can have a major impact? No, but if you have a media mechanism behind you, then even someone completely ignorant can become a specialist, an influencer, or a national inspirational figure. Modern media does not reward correctness. It rewards virality. It rewards the ability to control public emotions. And ignorance, with its naive statements, irrational beliefs, and arrogant declarations, more easily touches primal emotions than any logical reasoning ever could. You might think, no one believes those ignorant people. But the problem is, belief doesn't need logic to spread. It just needs a story, an image, a catchy soundbite, and media knows that better than anyone. In the digital media age, all information is a commodity, and the most consumable product is organized ignorance. It is packaged in memes, short clips, provocative quotes, and baseless confidence. Ignorance is no longer a cognitive gap, but a market product. And what is the consequence? The simpler and more confident someone is in their wrongness, the more likely they are to become icons. Those who doubt, self-reflect, and speak complex truths are pushed out of the game. The media mechanism has reprogrammed the knowledge ecosystem. Real knowledge, slow, hard to grasp, multidimensional, no longer holds commercial value. When media turns ignorance into a product, it doesn't just spread misinformation. It also creates influence structures based on illusion. The new guides are not analytical thinkers, but those who can make us feel understood. And this is extremely dangerous because it blurs the line between empathy and blindness. Social media algorithms do not work to raise awareness, but to retain users. And nothing retains better than content that makes you feel outraged, excited, or feel more right than others. Truth stands no chance in that race. But ignorance, it plays that game better than anyone. In an age where attention is currency, ignorance is no longer something to avoid. It becomes a strategic weapon to manipulate, dominate, and steer collective emotions. Whoever controls ignorance controls vast numbers of unthinking minds. When ignorance reigns, we don't just witness a society lacking knowledge but also face the collapse of moral judgment. No more right, wrong. Only I feel and I don't like that. A mature society distinguishes between personal emotions and universal principles. But modern society is equating morality with fleeting emotions. We feel outraged. Then that person must be wrong. We feel hurt. Then that must be banned. In the flow of collective emotion, moral reasoning is crushed. We no longer ask, is it right or wrong? Instead, we ask, how many people feel the same as I do? Truth is no longer the anchor. Emotional resonance is now king. When morality is replaced by emotion, ignorance is not only forgiven but protected. People can't be questioned because it offends them, can't ask for reasons because it hurts feelings. The result? A society where the weakest in reasoning hold the moral high ground. More and more, moral judgment is compressed into reaction icons. Thumbs up equals good, thumbs down equals bad, red equals, to follow anger symbol equals, to cancel emoji culture, replaces reasoning culture. And so, everything is simplified to a dangerous degree. We are living in an age where complexity is despised. Anything that demands thinking, reflection, or questioning is dismissed as overcomplicating things. Instead, we choose to live true to our feelings, without realizing that emotion is not a reliable moral compass. Emotions can be manipulated. Emotions can be based on lies. Emotions can reflect our basest instincts. And when morality is replaced by emotion, ignorance is legitimized by feeling right. No one is required to understand anything anymore, only to feel it's right. We don't need to know how complex an issue is. Just pick the side with the stronger feelings. Ignorance is no longer lack of knowledge, but emotional loyalty to a crowd. This is the most dangerous collapse of modern society, when personal emotion is crowned the supreme judge. No laws, no moral foundations, only a gut starving for validation and a head full of instinctual reactions. When ignorance is rewarded, it not only speaks to the failure of society, but is also a declaration of surrender by education, not because of a lack of schools, not because of a lack of resources, but because knowledge is no longer seen as desirable. Education, in its true sense, is the liberation of humans from functional ignorance. It is the journey from instinct to awareness, from the crowd to the independently thinking individual. But in modern society, education has been detoxified, gutted, and distorted. We no longer train people to think, but only train machines that follow orders, memorize, and earn grades. We call it academic success, but in truth, it is the legalization of unconscious obedience. In many modern education systems, questions like, "Why is this right? Is it possible to think differently?" are no longer encouraged. Instead, students are taught to respond according to pre-approved answers. Every punctuation mark has been predetermined. And so, after 12-16 years of studying, we produce a generation good at testing, good at repeating, good at conforming to standards but incapable of deep thinking, afraid to question, and unable to engage in meaningful dialogue. Knowledge is no longer a path to freedom, but merely a tool to score points. Modern society teaches, you only need to know enough to get a job. Don't ask too much. Just learn what's needed and move on. The question, what is truth? The question, what is meaning? Are pushed aside like useless luxuries. Philosophy is replaced by soft skills. History is replaced by presentation skills. Logic is replaced by the ability to work in teams. And so humans lose their intellectual muscles, becoming optimistic yet hollow beings. Wherever knowledge is devalued, ignorance takes a seat at the banquet of glory. He who knows nothing will be called simple. He who never reads will be seen as authentic. He who cannot reason will be praised as pure emotion. In a society where education doesn't teach people to distinguish right from wrong, then wrong will automatically wear the robe of morality, and right will be seen as annoying, even dangerous. We no longer expect enlightenment from education but merely demand it to serve social utility. Education has surrendered, knowledge has retreated, and functional ignorance, as Dietrich Bonhoeffer once warned, has become a political, cultural, and moral force, no longer seen as a problem, but the new standard for survival. If education is the system for training people, then media is the system that shapes people's thinking after they leave the classroom. And when both fail, society will no longer have free individuals, but only shadows reflected from screens. In the digital age, media is not just news. It rewrites reality. It directs public perception. It leads not to the truth, but to a controlled type of emotion. Ignorance in the media age is not knowing. It is knowing wrong, knowing distorted, knowing in a deliberate way. And the scariest thing is, the more we consume, the more we believe we know. Have you ever wondered why meaningless information, like celebrity gossip, entertainment scandals, sensational clips, always appears at the top of news feeds? Why do social platforms reward content that is simpler and more extreme with wider reach? It's not a coincidence. It is a system optimized for stupefaction. It turns outrage into energy. It turns fear into profit. It turns instant emotion into a tool for maintaining control. When people are overwhelmed with information, they no longer seek the truth. They seek a sense of certainty. And media delivers that, fast, forceful, and free. Truth is replaced by selective repetition. The result: people no longer react to what is wrong. They lose the ability to sense what is abnormal. Falsehoods, repeated often enough, become internal realities. Media does not create ignorance. It nurtures it. It turns ignorance into a market. It makes the ignorant believe they are knowledgeable and, more than that, believe they are right. The most dangerous person is not the one who doesn't know. It is the one programmed to think they know, while merely echoing a status line, a headline, or a short video clip. Modern mass media does not just reflect society. It redesigns society. It creates so-called public consensus, not based on reason but on shares, likes, and views. In that world, a philosophical argument is worth less than a viral quote. A deep analysis is buried beneath the laughter of a meaningless short clip. A cautionary idea is dismissed as negative, heavy, and bothersome. And so, society enters a state of slumber under the glow of screens. Everything is updated. Everything is hot. Everything is vivid, but what's missing is depth. Bonhoeffer once said, "Reasoning is useless against ignorance." Ignorance is not a lack of information, but a paralysis of the capacity to think. And media, with all its glamour, has helped paralyze the collective. Screens are no longer windows to the world. They are locked doors showing the world only as others want us to see it. And there, those who control the media are the rulers of reality. In every society, whether authoritarian or democratic, primitive or modern, there always exists a mechanism called the reward system. It's where society decides who deserves recognition and who must be excluded. And it is precisely here that we uncover one of the root causes of modern society rewarding ignorance. We live in an era where cuteness is rewarded more than wisdom. Fame is rewarded more than integrity. Obedience is rewarded more than critical thinking. The reward system has been redesigned, not to encourage merit but to preserve order. Let's look at a relatable example. Someone who dares to ask hard questions about flawed policies is labeled a troublemaker. Meanwhile, someone who always smiles, says pleasant things, and never questions anything is called inspirational. We've mistaken comfort for actual value. When rewards are based on emotional standards rather than rational ones, people avoid troubling others with the truth and choose to please the masses with simple, digestible content. As a result, the knowledgeable are excluded, while those who say pleasing things are praised. Rewards in modern society are no longer for merit, but mechanisms to reinforce conformity. Whoever echoes the crowd is loved. Whoever speaks differently is isolated. Whoever complicates things is seen as problematic, negative. This is not accidental. It is a strategy to turn ignorance into a shortcut to success. Then, who would still want to spend time learning? Who would still dare to pay the price for truth? Who would still have the patience to dig deep into issues? Society will fall into the state warned by philosopher Albert Camus. In an age of widespread deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act, because the reward system has turned into a hidden censorship mechanism. We praise the success of those who don't need to ask questions, don't need to debate, don't need to prove knowledge, just need to follow what the system expects. In such a society, success is no longer a mark of talent, but an indicator of obedience. Meanwhile, those who think deeply, raise ethical concerns, and dare to speak against injustice are labeled negative, uncooperative, difficult. They are excluded from the reward game, not broadcasted, not allowed to speak, not listened to. A society where the most dangerous people are those who think independently is a society rewarding ignorance as a means of maintaining order, will be the collapse of civilization. And you can clearly see this. In organizations, the average and safe get promoted. In companies, those who don't question get favored. In education, obedient students are rated higher than critical ones. It all points to one thing. The current reward system is not built to discover talent, but to preserve ease of control. And when the reward system is this distorted, then the ignorant but loyal will be praised, while the intelligent but brave will be seen as threats. That society doesn't need light. It only needs light bulbs that are easy to control. Then, the question is no longer, why are the capable excluded? But rather, who is designing this filter? And what do they want to keep? If we do not recognize, question, and resist, then all efforts in education, media, reform, and innovation will sink into meaninglessness, because they reward the wrong people, exclude the wrong ones, and protect what's wrong. Ignorance in modern society is no longer a personal issue. It has become an organized mechanism, a system that protects its own stagnation by fostering ignorance that serves power. Organized ignorance is different from natural ignorance. Naturally, ignorant people lack information or thinking skills. But the ignorant within a system are shaped to not need to think, because the system already thinks for him. Every social tool, from media, education, to offices, can subtly organize ignorance. No need to hide the truth. Just make the public not care about it. And that is the danger. When the system creates a kind of public intelligence that doesn't need intelligence. No need to understand deeply. Just enough to follow orders. A society run by people who avoid thinking is the easiest to control. The same goes for organizations. They don't need capable employees, just obedient ones. No need for dissent, just execution. No need to see the big picture, just stick to your part. The larger the system, the more people become dumb bolts in a giant machine. And when a machine stops evolving, it builds barriers to protect its stagnation. Those who propose change are seen as threats. New ideas are smothered in the name of stability. The result: ignorance is empowered to eliminate what's inconvenient. Just look at the education system. Many no longer teach students to think, but to pass exams, obey, and conform. Students don't need to understand why, only remember what to do. That is the foundation of organized ignorance. Media operates on the same logic. News isn't for information anymore, but for shaping emotions. Content doesn't need truth, just engagement. And the audience doesn't need to understand, just to feel. The system doesn't need you smart, just easily led. At that point, ignorance is no longer personal. It is structural. It is programmed. It is funded. It is protected as a necessary condition for the system's survival. Organized ignorance is the result of power corrupted. Because true knowledge is always liberating, those who want to control the crowd must control the production of knowledge. No need to ban knowledge, just devalue it. No need to kill thinking, just make it inconvenient. Civilizations don't collapse due to lack of resources, but because their own systems reorganize themselves against knowledge. They cripple thinking from the inside by raising soft but suffocating walls called procedure, organizational culture, professional ethics, social norms. In such a society, those who are well-behaved aren't necessarily knowledgeable, but those who know how to avoid the truth. They know when to stay silent, when to smile, when to agree even if deep down they know it's wrong. When ignorance is organized, the capable will be systematically eliminated, not because they are wrong, but because they disturb the comfort of what's wrong. And gradually, that system will only be left with people who don't know, don't want to know, and are ready to attack anyone who does. Ignorance is not just tolerated, it is orchestrated, renamed as one-sided positive thinking, wrapped in pretty words like peaceful and cooperative culture, celebrated through slogans, information safety, don't hurt others. But in truth, it's the silent destruction of thought. When society is flooded with organized ignorance, a strange but widespread phenomenon emerges. Intelligent people tend to stay silent. Not because they don't see, not because they don't understand, but because they know too well the cost of speaking up. The intelligent remain silent, not out of cowardice, but because they understand how collective ignorance operates. They know reason can't win against a crowd intoxicated by illusion. They know that dissent is often mistaken for rebellion, and they know that truth is sometimes taboo. In an environment that glorifies obedience, the knowledgeable often become the outcasts. Knowledge is no longer an asset, but a form of intellectual sin, leading to suspicion, exclusion, or collective coldness. So the intelligent choose silence, not to live inauthentically, but to preserve their clarity. They don't want to be martyrs for a blind crowd. In a world where truth is despised, silence is the last act of self-defense. That silence can take many forms: not joining debates, not expressing true opinions, not publicly challenging ideas, even turning invisible within the group. But behind that silence is a profound mental exhaustion. Each time a wise person chooses silence, they bury a piece of their conscience, not because they want to, but because they know it's not the time yet. They wait for a safe space. They wait for a door to open. But ironically, society has never been ready to open the door to truth. At times, the intelligent do try to speak. They share, explain, and challenge. But the response they get is usually evasion, mockery, sarcasm, "You've got too much time on your hands," and sometimes punishment. A society that rewards ignorance will always have ways to humiliate the awake. Clarity is labeled negative. Analysis is dismissed as overcomplicating things. Warnings are viewed as toxic. The result: intelligent people are forced to live like fools. But that silence itself is part of the tragedy. Because when the knowledgeable remain silent, those who oversimplify reality take over the discourse. They speak loudly, frequently, and are applauded, and falsehood becomes collective truth. Then the wise retreat once more, and the cycle continues. Society grows dumber. The aware are cast aside. The loud are empowered, and the crowd keeps cheering for falsehood as if it were truth. Some ask, why don't the capable lead society? The answer is, they tried and were rejected. No one can lead a crowd that applauds what's wrong. No one can hold a torch when they're stoned for its light. Silence becomes a survival strategy, a way to avoid being dragged into the mud, where the filthy are hailed as authentic, and the clean are branded as hypocrites. That's the paradox of modern society. The silence of the intelligent should not be seen as complicity, but as a sign of despair. They despair because they tried, and society rejected them. So what should we do? Should we force them to speak up? No. The only thing we must do is create a safe space for truth. A society where thinking is welcomed, not tortured by prejudice. When the intelligent realize their voice is no longer seen as provocative, they will not hesitate to speak for truth. And then, silence will no longer be the only option for the awake. We have gone through a dark picture, a society rewarding ignorance, manipulated by the crowd, forcing the wise to remain silent. The final question, the crucial one: how can we change? There is no simple answer. No miracle can reverse a distorted system. But there is an immutable principle. Every restoration of truth starts with a minority brave enough to wake up. First, we must stop applauding what we know is wrong. Don't like empty statements. Don't share shallow content just because it sounds nice. Don't support those who talk much but understand little. Especially, don't reward oversimplifications with praise. Next, start rewarding truth, even when it's hard to hear. Listen to those who don't follow the crowd. Respect those who dare point out the crowd's mistakes. Encourage critical thinking instead of labeling it rebellion. And when someone speaks the truth in a room full of silence, be the first to nod in agreement. We must also teach society how to recognize real value. Famous people are not always right. Being popular doesn't mean being profound. Applause is not always proof of truth. We need a detoxification of standards, where value is measured by depth, not volume. We need foundations that nurture intellect, education without indoctrination, media without cheap entertainment, forums without encouragement of mockery, and leaders unafraid of knowledge. If a society leaves no space for the intelligent to speak, it is digging its own grave. Individually, each of us must be a bit braver. Courage not to laugh with the crowd. Courage to question, even when something is repeated thousands of times. Courage to remain silent when others shout nonsense. And courage to speak up, even when labeled a troublemaker. Change doesn't come from grand speeches. It comes from small actions. A share for what is right. A nod for someone isolated for telling the truth. A clear-eyed glance in a room intoxicated by illusion. That is how we begin. Bonhoeffer once said, "Ignorance is more dangerous than evil, because evil we can expose, but ignorance we cannot argue with or convince." But he also said, "Awakening does not require a majority, only those brave enough to begin." And if you're watching this video until the very end, you are part of the waking minority. The issue is not that you will change the whole world, but that you no longer applaud what you know is wrong. We have lived long enough in a society rewarding ignorance. Now is the time to stop paying darkness with indifference. Stop canonizing the loud. Stop marveling at superficiality. And start cherishing awareness. Change doesn't start from the crowd. It starts with one person. From you. If you find this content important, don't share just because it's good, but because you want this society to stop rewarding ignorance. You alone can't change the world. But you can stop enabling distortion. And sometimes that's enough to start.